Hey everybody, my name is Inks. Today we're going to talk about a series of figures here today. These are from Joytoy, and they are Warhammer 40,000 Space Marines. Now the ones that I collect in particular just happen to be Blood Angel Space Marines, and this guy here stands approximately 5 inches tall. They're all about that height. The dreadnoughts and some of the larger guys obviously are going to be a little bit bigger, but overall the individual figures anyway are going to be a little over 5 inches tall. They come with a number of accessories and they have articulated joints, and we'll go through all of that here in just a moment. To start things off, let's get his box. Okay, so this one right here is a Space Marine Blood Angels Intercessors. There's actually 3 different ones that look very similar. This particular guy here has a little shield, a tilting shield, I believe it's called. And that and his little accoutrements down here below at his belt are what set him apart from one of the other ones that I'll show you in a few minutes. He is actually number 2 if you're looking for him online or to buy him online. They can sometimes be sold out because these guys have been out for a little while, and he is a Generation 1 figure. We'll go over the differences between Generation 1 and Generation 2 in a little bit. I do have a Generation 2 figure, but he's got tons of little he has tons of joints that move, even so much as the toes. We're going to talk about the toes kind of in more detail. Kind of seems silly perhaps, but the toes on Gen 1 have less movement than the toes on Gen 2, as well as a number of the joints are just looser on Gen 1. The shoulder pads and some of the poses that you can get with the figurines, they're just a little bit looser on Gen 1. Just bending his legs and so forth, just to show you that all the different poses that you can come up with. These little things that are attached to his belt, these all come off as well. Hopefully that focuses in so you can see. And they just plug back in on him. Now you can change these around if you want to. I just left them as the factory had them. He's got extra little things on him, like a book and a holster. The backpack also comes off if you want it to for some reason. Some of the other figures in the series have capes, and so you'll need to remove the backpack. And sometimes the backpack comes removed from the figure when you buy it. I will say in the Gen 1 figures that his head is a little more stiff, whereas the rest of the joints, including his waist here, are much looser than they are on the Gen 2s. I'll take a look at Gen 2 in just a moment. Let's take a look inside the box. Alright, so for this particular guy, you can see this is where his body was. He also comes with a bolt gun, or a bolter, and 4 different hands. I actually switched out the hands on this particular guy so that he could hold the chainsword better. The hand that is on there is meant for, or is better suited to hold, the bolt gun, which I'll show you in a minute on figure number 3. But this is just what comes inside the box. I tend to save the entire box myself and just sort of store it away. You can sort of do with it as you like. As you can see, the items in here are just loosely placed. They're not like stitched in or anything like that. This right here is the box for Space Marine number 3. I believe I have the numbering right on these guys because there is a Blood Angels Intercessors. He's just called that. Then there's Blood Angels Intercessors number 2, Blood Angels Intercessors number 3, and we'll talk about number 4 in a moment because I have that one as well. I don't have number 1 or the Blood Angels Intercessor just named. They're all fairly similar in looks and specs though, so if you're trying to buy these online, it can be a little bit confusing. Let's just take a look in his box. You can see that the boxes here are identical. in terms of width and height. The inside of the box is actually the same, but for completion's sake, let's just take a look. You can see on this figure I opted to use his bolter instead of the chainsword and bolt pistol. Show you a little cool thing about the bolt pistol. Sometimes it's just about the details, right? Here's the bolt pistol. The magazine actually comes out. So you could position it to have his hand hold it. This actually goes all the way in. Or you can have it sticking out a little bit. When you get it in your box, it's probably going to be slightly sticking out. Let's take a look at number 3. Again, he is a Gen 1 figure. This is him with his bolter. You'll notice the difference between the two. There's a couple of things. Number 1, figure number 3 does not have a tilting shield. And the things on his belt around his waist are also different. He has a very, very basic loadout, where the other guy has, or this guy has books and so forth. His loadout is very basic and just less flash, less bling. The squad markings are exactly the same. The yellow blood drop, the skull knee pad here. And so this is what figure number 3 looks like. Blood Angels Intercessor number 3, that is. Now number 4 is quite interesting, because number 4 is not a Blood Angels Intercessor at all, but a Blood Angels Aggressor. When you look the codes up online, he's actually Blood Angels Aggressor 04 for some reason. But he came out at the same time as the Intercessors, and so I guess that's why he's part of their codes or whatever. Let's take a look at the box first. That's it. Boring and empty, and he's all one piece. Let's take a look at him now. Here he is. He's a big, chunky boy, this one. His legs are a little bit hard to pose. You can see exactly how tall he stands. He's not any taller than the others. He's just bulkier. And by quite a bit. His arms have a bunch of limited movement. They don't like to stay posed up very well. I wanted to have him sort of holding his bolter like this. And yeah, he didn't want to do that. He has a couple of little things down here on his belt, which is a piece of cloth, actually. Like it's a real piece of string. It's quite interesting. The cables and stuff, the ammo feed belts here, are actually very flexible. They're not stiff at all, which does mean that his arms can move about quite a bit, but it's the joints. And let's take a look in here where you can see the separation of the joint on this guy is quite a bit more than the other Space Marines. Now these shoulder pads come off. You don't have to worry about that or anything. And if you push it in, he looks nice and compact. But the second you start to try to move him and pose him, because he's so bulky, he's going to need... he's a little bit more difficult to pose than the other guys. I also would say, and he fell over, it's sort of a balancing act with his torso and his legs. He's very top heavy. And to be honest, I've only found one pose that really worked, and even then he falls over quite a bit. Ta-da! Anyway, that is the Blood Angels Aggressor. He's the only aggressor that they've made. This is plastic here, by the way. This is not rope like this is at his waist belt. This is actually like a piece of string that these little trinkets are on. Here's the back of him. You can see that chunky backpack. The backpack does not come off. It's molded to him, so you don't have to worry about that falling off or any of those other pieces coming off. His head does move. The head is removable, although not easy to remove and not easy to get to. It's stuck in there pretty well, but there is a joint in there, and technically the head is removable should you want to remove it for some reason. Alright, and last but not least, we'll set him aside, so I'll have to pose him later. Again, the Aggressor is a Gen 1 figure. Last but not least, we have Primaris Lieutenant Tolmeron. He is a Gen 2 figure. He is my only Gen 2 figure. You'll notice the box is quite a bit slimmer than the other boxes. Let's take a look inside and see the extra bits that Tolmeron comes with, and then we'll take a look at the figure itself. First off, because he is a character, comes with a card. The back of the card is written in Chinese, or I believe it's Chinese. Mandarin, perhaps. No idea what it says. Didn't bother taking the card out. He has a... I don't tend to like them, but let's take it. We'll open it up so you guys can see. He does have a flesh head instead of wearing a helmet. A couple different things about him. Number one, he comes with a fleshed head. Ugh, look at that face. Only a mother could love, right? There's Tolmeron. I don't like the fleshed head. I keep the helmet on him. He also has, you'll notice down here, his hands are different from the hands in the Gen 1. They have the order hands. That's these ones here. He's got a spread out hand, and he's got two other hands for holding things. And one, this guy here, is just a closed fist. He comes with a special bolt pistol and a power sword, which we'll take a look at in a minute. And his backpack was separate as well for this guy. Alright, here we go. Here is Tolmeron. He is a lieutenant, so he's got the gold helmet. He's got the backpack with the lieutenant designation, the power sword, and he's got the pistol. This pistol is less bulkier than the Gen 1 pistol, and the ammo feed, or the ammo clip, does not come in and out. He's got a number of trinkets on his belt, as you can see, just like the first Intercessor did. Spin him around here so you can see his belt. And he's got a little cape here in the front. Fairly soft plastic, easily movable, doesn't impede his joints in any way whatsoever. He has his special marking on the shoulder pad that says Santos, part of his name. Now, this guy is a Gen 2, so what is different about Gen 2 over Gen 1? The height is the same. Just to show you, he hasn't changed. He's approximately 5 inches tall. It's the joints. The joints on this guy are just tighter. It's hard to show off on camera, but he's easily more... He's easier to pose, in my opinion, as well. There's also more play in his shoulder pad area. I don't feel like the arm is going to snap off when I flex him out like this, when I pull him out like this. And the shoulder plates themselves, which are removable, let's remove one. Just the joint, the way that they do the joints is just different. The shoulder pads actually clip on with this little clip thing right here. They're kind of annoying to put back on, so I regret taking it off. Drop that, so we'll leave that for later. But it does give you a better look at the joint articulation on this guy. His torso, I I don't know if you can see this. Everything is just a tighter fit except for the head. The head is loosey-goosey, which is really interesting because on Gen 1, the heads are fairly tight. They don't really want to move a whole lot. These heads move quite a bit, and there's something else different about the heads as well. Give me your hat. Give me your head. The joint is different. In Gen 1, this little, I don't know you want to call it there, pip. This little pip right there that locks into the head is different on Gen 1 in that it's part of it and that whole thing locks down into the neck. Whereas this one, the neck is separate from the head, and that's why the head is more loosey-goosey than on the Gen 1 guys. Actually, a big improvement. I actually prefer the head to be a little bit looser. It lets me pose him. It lets me have him look around, look up, look down, look left, look right. Look, whichever direction I want him to look, he's going to. The legs are also, because the joints are a bit stiffer, he's also easier. Like his legs are easier to pose, and he's more stable on his feet. The other thing too is his toes. I said I would talk about this early on. But the toe articulation is way better in Gen 2. This little plate that's right here is pushed back, and so it gives more room for the toes to do their work. Whereas on Gen 1, you can see that this plate right here is pushed forward, and so the articulation, not in the ankle, but in the toe itself, is a little more limited. And because of that, it makes the posing of the model, the legs, a little bit more difficult, in my opinion. So overall in Gen 2, you can't physically see the difference between these two guys. If I put them side by side, you really couldn't tell which one was Gen 1 and which one was Gen 2 unless you notice spot the little differences, like the little toe flaps here, the armor on the toes is a big giveaway. The torsos are also a tiny bit more extended. I don't know if you can tell that by looking at them, but his torso is a little bit more visible than the Gen 1 torso, and then the heads are different as well. That's the other way that you can tell the difference in generation is via the heads. The way the shoulder pads attach is also different, I believe. There we go. So you can see that the shoulder pad attachment is different in Gen 1 versus Gen 2. In Gen 1, they were on this little pip system. I don't know what this is actually called. I keep calling it a pip. Whereas in Gen 2, they're bracketed on, which makes the shoulder pad sit closer to the actual shoulder and doesn't make it stick out like it does with the pip. It also means that Gen 1 and Gen 2, the figures are not... the pieces are not fully interchangeable, so if you want to mix and match some pieces because you get different guys or whatever, you can do that within Gen 1 to Gen 1 and Gen 2 to Gen 2, but you can't cross them over between each other because some of the things are different, such as the head and the shoulder pads are different. The backpacks are absolutely the same. If I want to just swap his backpack off and give it to him over here, I can do that for whatever reason. So some things are interchangeable, but generally speaking, the shoulder pads and the heads are not interchangeable. The little things that are on their belt buckles, those are the same. They use the same pip system as before, so if you want to switch around and give this guy the book, or this guy he's got a knife on the back of his belt, if for some reason you wanted to give the knife to the other guy, you could do so. And the knife actually comes out, which is really freaking cool. It's just the little details like this that make these toys extra special. Cost-wise, retail-wise, Gen 1 to Gen 2, the cost difference there isn't any cost difference. They actually cost the same, the both of them. Prices will vary depending on where you buy it. I will try and leave some links down below. I bought mine both from U.S. retailers and not Canadian retailers, even though I live in Canada. Something just to keep in mind. And you can also get them from AliExpress. I've never dealt with AliExpress. I don't know how good that is or how bad that is. So if you have some experience with that, maybe leave a comment below and tell me whether or not that's been a good experience or a bad experience, or just a neutral experience. I don't know. These guys retail for about $45, give or take, for each one. Some of the figures are a little bit more expensive. I believe Tolbaron was a little bit more money than the Intercessor guys, for example. But the Aggressor and the Intercessors, I believe, were about the same price, approximately $45. Now, if you're going to get a Dreadnought, those are like $200. So it really just depends on if you're getting individual figures or if you're getting like a pack. For example, there is a Blood Angels Death Company pack where you get 5 figures. That's about $200, $220, something like that. So, prices are going to vary a little bit, but generally speaking, expect to pay between $45 and $50 a figure for these things. I believe you can get them on Amazon as well. I've seen them advertised there. So, let me know what you think. This is the first time I've ever done a video like this, showing off my toys, as it were, showing off these figures from Joytoy. I think they're absolutely fantastic. The paint job on them is really superb. McFarlane makes figures as well, but the scale is different and the paint job is less amazing. Although you could always paint these yourselves if you wanted to. If you wanted to paint over it for some reason, you could do that with acrylic paint. McFarlane actually makes blanks that are made for you to paint up in your own scheme, in your own colors, and so forth. These guys are a little bit smaller. They're more well made, or they're better made, and overall just been a joy to work with and own. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time. Remember to be kind, be safe, and enjoy the adventure. We'll see you then.